Holy shike, let's talk about pigs. Here's your host of the Pork Podcast, Jennifer Shike.
There's just something about the story behind the story. And as a storyteller, I'm always searching for ways to give readers just a little bit more. And that's what the Pork Podcast is all about, bringing you stories of the people and the progress of the pork industry. I'm Jennifer Shike. Let's go find just a little bit more. Scott Hayes never imagined a Missouri farm boy raised back in the hills would be doing what he's doing today. Not only did he rise up to lead the National Pork Producers Council as president in 2023 and 2024, but he then took over as executive director of the Missouri Pork Association after his term as president ended. Scott Hayes is as genuine as they get. One of my favorite quotes about Scott came from his wife, who simply said, "There's no fake around Scott." It's my honor to welcome Scott to the Pork Podcast today.
Hello, Jennifer. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I'm thrilled you can be here. I know you're busy, and so it's fun to get a few minutes just to catch up with you. And a lot has happened in your life since we've really sat down to have a good visit. Did you ever imagine that you would be stepping into this role as executive director at Missouri Pork Producers Association?
No, really, I didn't. I got started early in my career, coming around with the pork industry or the pork association. Being a delegate and doing different things, but never thought I would be in this role.
What's your first year been like for you? Because you're coming up about a year being on board, right?
Yeah. Just passed my 1 year anniversary. It's been fun. I guess is the first thing I'll say. It's been exciting and fun. I really enjoy the work. And as I told a lot of people, there's no easier group or easier industry to be an advocate for. Just a lot of friends in the industry, but just a lot of good people. You just everybody you come across in the pig industry are just good, hardworking people that want to do what they really just want to be left alone to get to do what they do. So that makes it easy to work for them, to go out and advocate for them, help move their product, and just be a champion for them.
For sure. Well, I know that you have had farming in your blood since you were just a little boy. And so, maybe let's go back just a little bit. Why don't you share about how your family farming operation started and kind of your path as a child in the farming industry?
Oh boy. So yeah, I claim to be a fifth generation farmer. I really don't know how deep the roots run, but I do know my great grandfather bought what we still call the home place in 1918. My dad grew up there. I grew up there. My cousins own it now, but it's still in the family. It's fun. My kids still want to go to that farm and take their kids there to walk around. It's real close to Mark Twain Lake, so it's in the rolling hills there in Monroe County. Just a beautiful farm. Typical, very diversified farm, cattle, pigs, crops. So that's how I grew up. Grew up in the 80s. And now I know how tough the 80s were, for my dad and my uncles and my grandpa. But as a kid, we didn't know times were hard. It's just the way it was. We enjoyed being on the farm. We enjoyed working, with the livestock, spending time in the woods, in the creeks, fishing, hunting, all those things that you think about a farm boy doing growing up.
Well, you did answer the call to serve your country and the U.S. Army in Europe. And I'd love to know what compelled you to join the Army and how did that change your life and really set the course for your future?
Well, so it's been a long back several generations. It's been known in our family that you have to go do something after high school or after school. There's not a job on the farm for you right away. And I see the wisdom in that more and more, the older I get. And my kids grew up knowing that, and they all followed that same rule. Uh, for me, college wasn't probably the best option. There wasn't money for college, even though some of my siblings made it work. So I chose the military. Uh, glad I did. Uh, really eye-opening, for a young man that or a young boy at that time that grew up on a farm, didn't get out of Missouri much. We didn't travel a lot. We went a few other states to visit family, but not a lot of travel. So hadn't seen a lot. Uh, to be real honest, I hadn't been around a lot of different people until that point. So the military is a great education and people, I guess sociology. But and I realized there's good people everywhere. Uh, really all over the world. As you said, I ended up in Germany, and that was in the '80s when we were still East and West, and some of those things going on. Uh, Reagan and Gorbachev were having their discussions over the wall while I was there. So a little bit contentious, but very, very fortunate to serve during peacetime. But what it did for me, that I still use today, is just give me the courage to to uh, get off the farm, get out of Missouri, go different places, do different things. I've been fortunate to get to travel a lot of places around the world. I'm always ready to go, meet new people, see new things, no matter where it's at. And if I hadn't joined the army, I don't know that I ever would have made that leap.
Mhm. Yeah, I know that's such a big decision and it's such a life-changing one too. What advice would you have for young people who might be considering that path, something similar to what you've done? Is there any advice that you might share with them that you've learned from your experiences?
Oh boy, you might get me in trouble here. My youngest son considered that for a while, and my wife did not think that was a good plan. So it's different. I know my mom wasn't happy with me, and I didn't understand that till one of my sons considered it. But it it's a very positive experience. Um, Obviously there's a discipline uh, portion, or uh, yeah, you're gonna have find self discipline that you may have thought you had, but didn't really have to that level. You can they'll teach you can do things that you never thought possible, uh, which will serve you well for a long time. But the real education is just in meeting different people from different walks of life, uh, and truly understanding uh, all the different cultures and ethnicities and all that make this country great, and really get to appreciate that.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. It's, similar themes because I think about the things that you're saying are things that I could say that I love about agriculture and being a part of this industry. The discipline that I've learned from being tied into farming and agricultural upbringing, but also what keeps me in it are the people and the connections. And I couldn't agree more with what you said in the beginning about, getting to serve some of the best people because uh, it truly is a great opportunity to work for people in the pork industry for sure.
Sure, the connections that I made in the military, I certainly feel today, and in the pork industry. I know when I left, and my grandpa was a World War II veteran. He said, "You'll make better friends in the next 8 weeks than you've made in the last 12 years." Uh, and to a certain extent, he was right. But that same level of friendship I have today with people that I've worked with in the pig industry, because you know where their heart's at, and once you trust somebody at that level, you know, uh, it's just a bond you don't forget.
Mhm. Well, and I mean, I do think you guys weather a lot of storms together in the industry because let's just be real. I mean, the pork industry is not just an easy street where everything goes the way you want it to go. I mean, it's maybe the opposite of that, and it's that resilience and that willingness to like come around each other and help each other get through it. I know that you have a lot of really. I know that you have a lot of people who think very highly of you and what you've done for them in the industry. And I remember conversations before I even knew who you were where people brought you up in the conversation. Um, And it's really neat to see how you guys rally around each other. Why do you think the pork industry is so close knit? Do you think other livestock species are like that? Do you think it's the same thing, or what do you think it makes the pork industry special?
Yeah, I don't know that I can speak to other livestock industries. On the outside, they don't appear to get along uh, sometimes, but I, yeah, I think in the pork industry, we're willing to share with one another, to work together. We don't, as a friend of mine, Brent Sandage says, we don't see each other as competitors. We see each other as colleagues, and we want each other to do well. So we're willing to share with one another, to help each other, and I think it's like you said, we've been through the tough times together. And I've been fortunate. I've had those people that I can call in those tough times, and just talk it through. It just helps to know somebody else is there and that understands it, that and can help you find that bright spot in those dark times, uh, and then enjoy the good times. There's a lot of good times. Raised pigs full time for 35 years. Don't know anything else I could have done that would have been as fulfilling, as rewarding, and set me up for where I'm at today. I owe a lot to the pig industry. It really is rewarding. Uh, I, Part of the reason I got into it is I enjoy numbers, and I mean, very much enjoy the animals, but I feels like every week I get to start over. You've got to pick a new group of sows this week, and so let's see if we can do better than we did last week. I tell my brother that crop farms, that he's going to get to do that 40 times in his life, and that doesn't keep me excited enough. I need to do it 52 times a year, not 40 times in my lifetime. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned about like how everybody rallies around each other because you're trying to help each other do well and succeed. But you also talk about that a lot in terms of pigs. And I've heard you say before, if the pigs do well, we'll do well. And I know that that's been a concept that's been passed down for generations in your family. So what do you exactly mean by if the pigs do well, we'll do well? What does that mean and look like for you on your farm?
Sure. So, uh, that for me, for most of my career, nearly all of my income was from pigs. And I guess even going back to the home farm, a significant portion of the income was from pigs. So, if we took care of the pigs, uh, the better they did, the more income there was, for the family. Uh, and, and so they always took priority. Uh, you know, we we housed them. We wanted them on the farm, so it was always our responsibility to take care of them, and it didn't matter what day of the week it was or what time of the day it was. If the pigs needed something, they got our attention, and that's still the way it is today. Uh, and there's a reward at the end of that, but it's more than that. It's just the desire to take good care of our our animals.
Yeah. I'm going to guess there have been a few changes that have been taking place on your farm lately since you've taken on this role. And I remember even when you were really busy serving as president, I know that your family picked up some extra jobs during that time too. So talk to us a little bit about how have you guys changed things up on the farm? How do you balance all of that?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of my kids who are running the farm now do a better job of balancing it than I did. I came home and put my head down and went to work, and fortunately had a wonderful wife that put up with me working a lot of hours. Uh, but yeah, I grew the farm. It looked different uh, it, 2 years ago than what it did when I took over the pig part of the operation. But I look back, it looked a lot, what my dad put together looked a lot different than what my grandpa put together. Like what we all had in common was, we did the best we could with the farm to take care of our families. And so 2 years ago, we downsized our operation uh, quite a bit. The biggest change was we don't have we don't own near as many pigs as we did before. I found myself in a situation where the older generation, who were partners, didn't want to own pigs anymore, didn't want the risk, and I thought it was going to be a great opportunity for my kids. And I went to my kids and they said, "No way, Dad, we are not owning pigs. We want to raise pigs. We like pigs. We want to be in the pig industry, but we are not going to own them. We're not going to ride that financial roller coaster that we watched you ride for 35 years." Uh, that that set me back. I wasn't ready for that. I always knew they wanted to raise pigs, and I guess I just assumed that it's going to transition that way. So we made some significant changes. A little bit hard for me, to be honest, but happy with where we're at today. The pigs are still paying a lot of bills. My daughter Daria Carr runs the pig part of the operation. We still own some pigs. Uh, Really thoroughly enjoys raising pigs, and as good as anybody in the industry. I'd say better than most at raising pigs and taking care of the people that she works with. So she takes care of the pig operation. My son, who's a little more mechanically minded, enjoys the shop, enjoys trucks and pumping equipment and all that stuff that goes along with raising pigs, maintenance on buildings. He's running that part of the operation. So couldn't be any more proud of the two of them. The doing taking over their portion of the family business. Uh, uh, yeah, I've got my other children. Most of them are involved in ag in some way or another, which just is kind of a testament to growing up on a farm and appreciating those values that come with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's fun to see how the different talents and strengths that your kids have are being used in different ways across the industry too. And I think about, we're not all made to do the same thing, and how different we can all be within the same family. I know that my siblings and we all have different strengths, and to try to put us all doing the same job, I don't think that would go very well, because we're all wired a little differently. And I think that's kind of a neat thing. Um, I want to bring up succession planning only because I'm curious, because you're a little bit, you're not really quite there yet, but it's this time where we're hearing more and more people talking about it. I've heard reports of there being a lot of younger people taking over farming operations. And I don't know if this is true in your state, but where, that younger generation may not have like a real formal succession plan in hand, but they're just kind of stepping forward, kind of into this unknown. And I think succession planning is something we probably need to talk a little bit more about as an industry. And so, any thoughts from where you sit, either on what you've experienced, maybe in your own family, or things that you've seen in the role that you're in and working with pork producers in your state?
Yeah, I certainly don't know that we've done it right. I've watched it through a couple of generations, and now trying to work through it. Uh, some really on both ends, with my parents, and then trying to get my kids involved. But I think you have to be creative. And what I mean by that is, don't know that, just one generation buying the farm from the next generation and, going down the line, that that's a pretty big lift. Uh, I look at land costs when I started in '89 until today, and I, yeah, my kids aren't going to write that check, or have access to that kind of capital. So, uh, what we've tried to do is be a little more creative, uh, and form different type of relationships, different type of, they're formal or they're companies. Uh, my accountant jokingly says if I form one more LLC, he's going to quit. I might have to find somebody else, but I keep starting different companies with different kids or different family members, and that's all part of that transition. Why do I? It's yeah, but I think or the history of our family that we've always had formal relationships. We have contracts, we have agreements. I don't own a portion of an LLC that doesn't have a buyout. There's always a buyout. The best time to agree to how it ends is the day you start it. The worst time to do it is when it has to be unwound. So uh, and I've had people push back on that, but I tell people, because they say, "Oh, you do that with family," and I say, especially with family. Family is the most important thing. At the end of the day, we want to be together as a family. All this other is just stuff. Uh, and yeah, it's a farm, and we've got emotional attachment to it. It's been the family a long time. Nobody would be more upset than me, if we had to, totally move away from it or sell it. But at the end of the day, it's just stuff. Families more than that. So yeah, that's some of the things, the rules that we live by, and some of the things that we try to do. I can tell you, uh, one of the biggest hurdles I hear and even experience is when you get into this factor. And I finally had told my wife, we have 6 children, and there's 17 years from the oldest to the youngest, and we started down this path, and fairness thing kept coming up. And I finally realized, and I told my wife, I said, we want to be fair. The only way to truly be fair is none of them get anything. Once you move past that, you move past fair. And so I think we get too hung up on fair, and we miss out on opportunities trying to be fair. So my kids will tell you today, I guess, if you ask them, uh, we're growing the pie. Everybody's going to get a piece of the pie. Let's grow the pie. And that doesn't look fair every day, but at the end of in the end, it's going to be better for everyone.
That's excellent. Excellent perspective and advice. And I'd say sounds like you're doing a good job. And I think the reason why I would point that out is like you're talking about it. You're having conversations and it's part of what you guys do. And for a lot of families, I think it just being able to sit down and talk about it, it's become such a big thing, and it prevents what needs to happen, I guess. And so I applaud you guys for being open about it. And I don't think there's just one way to do it, right? So
Sure, and yeah, and doesn't appear that that maybe the traditional way is working as well, and it's certainly not the only way. There's lots of ways to go about
yeah, for sure.
We will be right back after this message from our sponsor.
Want to optimize your barns and improve your pork production? Subscribe to AP Connect to turn your smartphone into a barn window to save time and work smarter for better performance. With AP Connect's updated API, you can share real-time barn data from your existing controllers with trusted partners like your veterinarian or swine management software. This means sharing critical insights such as temperature, humidity, pressure, run times, and feed consumption in real time. Plus, add remote monitoring and check your barns from anywhere, right from your phone, tablet, or computer. This helps you make faster decisions, spot trends, and adjust quickly before small issues become big problems. Work smarter, giving your vet and team the data they need to keep pigs healthy. And simplify data management, eliminating guesswork and bringing confidence to every decision. Talk to your AP dealer to see how easy and affordable it is to unlock the next level of barn connectivity. Or visit automatedproduction.com to check your controller compatibility.
Well, let's chat about Missouri pork stuff, because I know you've had a lot going on. My mind just spins whenever I visit with those of you who are kind of working at organizations and associations, because you have so many different things that you're keeping track of. So there's a lot of hot topics right now. What's the biggest topic on your mind that you're dealing with from your place in Missouri? What gets the majority of your attention right now?
So right here in Missouri, our legislature finished up last week, finished up their session. Uh, we got along pretty well this time here in Missouri. There was some animal welfare stuff, some food labeling stuff that we were able to educate people on, and fortunately, those bills didn't make it to the governor's desk. Uh, and that's fortunate for everybody, especially the consumer. Uh, we did get a piece of legislation through on fire protection for livestock buildings that would have been very costly and very problematic for livestock buildings. Uh, and so we're proud of that to protect farmers. Freedom to farm. There's the voters a year ago passed a proposition called Proposition A that sets a minimum wage, but it also gives employees 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours worked. That was causing a lot of trouble for farms. Uh, you know, because you basically had to rewrite so that your sick leave plan, your vacation plan, and a lot of our farms just do personal time off. Uh, so and it just made a mess of the accounting programs that figure payroll. So there was a fix for that that's laying on the governor's desk. So hopefully he signs that as well. Just to the farmers have plenty to do. They don't need to put more math to make payroll. And and our farmers, they're good people. They don't want people to work if they're sick. We tell people all the time in the industry, if you're sick, stay home. Don't come to the barn. And so it obviously affected every employer in the state of Missouri, but really didn't fit for our farms. So hopefully we got that fixed. So those are some of the things that's going on here in the state. More of my conversations are nationally with tariffs, farm bills on everybody's mind. Still open for a Prop 12 fix. We see more states talking about putting regulations or restrictions on big farmers in Missouri. That gets to be a challenge. We already have 2 states that have regulations on how we need to raise pigs for them, and more looking at it. So how many different states do we have to follow their regulations, have their inspectors come to our farms, those kinds of things. So hopefully we get the farm bill pushed through. We're still working on that. The tariff thing is the one that's just such a challenge because it changes so rapidly, just up and down. I know personally we're looking at doing a little remodel project at the farm, and we pushed it back several weeks now because some of that equipment was coming from overseas, and the price changed quite a bit. And we hopefully that'll come back in line, where we can move that project forward. But it's just the unknown. And the bigger unknown is, that's obviously on moving out, reciprocal tariffs from different countries that would slow product moving out and changing the value of the pig. Producers really thought 2025 was just going to be a really, really good year. Certainly needed it after the hole that we dug in 23 and part of 24. What turned out to be the worst time in my lifetime in the pig industry financially. So, producers need a good year this year, just to somewhat get out of that hole that they found themselves in.
Yeah. Well, you kind of bring up something in that I think is really important about the role of what you do as a state exec. I mean, you spend a lot of time listening and talking with other producers, from your state, but also, across the country. And one of the things I like to do is to talk to people who know you, um, personally and professionally. And I visited with Jen Sorensen, who you served with for quite a few years on the MPPC board, and you guys were officers together. And she had a lot of great things to say about you. She also had some things that were like, you can't put that on the air. So I won't bring those up. We'll talk about those later. But one of the things that really struck me was that she said, Scott is such a great listener. He responds thoughtfully and he builds consensus. He is genuinely a kind, good person and the type of person that you want to be in a foxhole with. The type of person who puts others first and most importantly, puts doing what is right first and foremost. And when she said that, I thought, yeah, I know who that is. That's Scott Hayes. There's no question about that. I've witnessed this in you over the years from the comments that you make on and off the stage, whether you're in front of people or behind the scenes. I've listened to your friends say these things. You've had a lot of life experiences that I think have helped prepare you to be this type of leader. And as you reflect back, can you think of an experience in your life that has taught you the value of those qualities that you possess as a leader now?
Well, I get told a lot that I'm just like my dad. You get around Monroe City, uh, and I watched my dad a number of times. I lost track of how many times in my life that I see my dad uh, visit with folks. If he was in a crowded room, Dad would look around for the person that nobody was talking to, the person sitting by themselves, and that's where he would. And he always said everybody's got a story, and most of them are pretty darn good. So I and just being with him, tagging along with him. If the few vacations we went on, we'd always want to stop at a coffee shop in the morning to for breakfast, and we'd all be sitting at a table, and Dad would be over at the coffee drinkers table or table with somebody else, talking, laughing, just finding out their story. Uh, and the older I get, the more I enjoy that. It is fun, and he's right. Everybody has a story, and most of them are pretty good. Once in a while, you run across one you maybe regret striking up the conversation with, but that's all right too, because you'd miss out on all the good ones if you never did it. Uh, but life really is about people, uh, and it was instilled in us in a young age that, how important family is. And that's true. But it's more than that. It's about our neighbors too. So I enjoy being around people. I like to smile. My great grandfather lived through the Depression, lost his mom when he was just a boy, had kind of a tough childhood with a stepmom niece. I can remember him saying it to me, and he said, "Smile when you can, boys. There'll be days you can't." And it's simple, but it's not a bad model to live by. And I think most people want to smile. And so that, yeah, I enjoy being around people. I enjoy visiting. I enjoy, hearing good stories, funny stories, whatever. But if somebody needs, to talk about something that's tough, well, let's do that too. And because we get through that, then we can get back to talking about stuff. Smile. But it comes from family.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like he was that's a great example to grow up with. A lot of the lessons that we learn about leadership don't really happen in a textbook or, no one really sits down and, or at least I've found this to be true. It's not like, here is one thing that you need to know, and I'm just going to tell you so you never have to do it. I find most of my leadership lessons that were hard, I had to learn the hard way by like going through something and maybe not doing it right and then realizing how I should have done it. Can you think of a lesson that you have learned along the way that was kind of a tough lesson to learn in leadership? Because I do view you as a person that I look up to in the industry as a leader, and I know many people do. um, what's a hard thing you've had to learn the hard way?
Oh boy. Well, glad you recognize that I had a great example growing up with family. Uh, and as you mentioned, right after that, I went into the military, so I understand that style of leadership. Uh, so I've got a lot to reach back on. And then was fortunate to go through some leadership training early on with through the cooperative system, uh, some of their board training, and then Missouri A-Lot, cultural leaders tomorrow went through that. So I had some real leadership training, some great mentors along the way. As far as this tough lessons, uh, probably get in more trouble with my sense of humor, my desire to lighten things up, and there's times I read the room wrong or read a person wrong, and find out that I didn't handle it right, and you can't get that back. Uh, but I have learned to be quick to apologize when that happens, and try to get back where we need to be. But I think just trying to understand where people are at, and understand where they want to go, and then try to identify that and be a servant leader, be a leader that's walking along beside folks instead of pushing from behind or pulling, or standing in front yelling, but just be more of that servant leader, that friend, and let's give me where on the path that you want to go. Help me see the end goal, and I'll certainly help you get there.
Yeah, it's really good. Well, I want to make sure we talk about your family just a little bit because I know, I mean, and you've shared that you have 6 kids. I know that you have a very big, wonderful family. You guys have a lot of fun together. What do you think was the best part of getting to raise your kids up on the farm?
Just the baddies that come with that. Uh, you know, our house used to, by 6:30 in the morning, our house was stirring. And it was kids uh, going out to check on their livestock. They had, you name it, we had it: chickens, sheep, mostly sheep, some goats, cattle, uh, even a rabbit or two. Kids are at 4-H, but before school, after school, no matter what the weather was, they were headed out to the barn to check on that stuff, take care of it. But for the most part, they enjoyed it. But and then to see them now as adults and doing well in their careers, uh, anytime I visited with where any of my kids have worked, and this is held true for my oldest, 35 years old now, uh, and had the opportunity to visit with the people they work with or work for. They bragged on their work ethic, and their honesty. Uh, that that just I'm so pleased that that's where uh, you know what they took from their childhood, and it puts them so far ahead in the world today. You know, Gosh dang, when I got out of high school, if you showed up on time and worked all day and left at the end of the day, didn't do any more than that, you were just a good average worker. Today, if you do that, it seems like you're at the top. You're working, you're moving up into management pretty quick, uh, and which really strikes me as odd. Uh, but I tell my kids, and kids like my kids, yeah, you're in the top 25%, maybe even higher than that, just because you're honest and you'll work hard. I don't care what your grades are. I don't care, anything else. But those two things put you in the top 25%, which gives you tremendous amount of opportunity. The opportunity for my kids, it's much greater than the opportunity I had when I was getting out of school in the 80s. Uh, but they've got to take hold of that. They've got to seize that and make it happen. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so good. I think you develop such a respect when you grow up on the farm too. It's is a respect for that that privilege, I guess, that you have of caring for something else, whether it's to your point, whether it's a rabbit or a sheep or a pig or even, you know, a vegetable in a garden, right? Like just the reality that when you're caring for something else, it teaches you to respect um the fragility of life, I guess, a little bit, you know? And I just don't know. Sometimes I try to figure out like what makes these kids different that have kind of this tie to agriculture or the farm. Um, and I do think that all the responsibility and everything that you're saying, I can definitely agree with. And I love that when I think about different state organizations, I look at your state as one of the leaders when it comes to creating opportunities for the future generations of the swine industry. There's no denying you guys care a lot about your young people because it shows in all the things that you do. You provide so many opportunities for them. You try to meet them where they're at. You provide them opportunities to experience the industry in really practical ways. Why is that so important and been such a focus for Missouri Pork Association?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. Uh, we want we want kids to have that perspective that farm kids, right? And I don't know if that's the right word, but the life experience. Just carry them through life. They just have a different perspective. They have a different way of looking at things and thinking about things. If you've raised livestock, you've been through some really good times. You've sensed had a real sense of pride when things go well and everything works well. And then you have some down days when you go to the barn and you've lost an animal. So it's just, and that's natural. That's a perspective that everybody had up until a couple hundred years ago. So I think that's important, but more important maybe as we think about Missouri pork, we do see that as our future leaders. And you know, uh, criticism I get once in a while is, well, these show kids, they're not gonna work in a farm. Or very few of them's ever gonna work in a farm. And I say, yeah, you're probably right, but that's okay. But we need veterinarians, we need researchers, we need nutritionists, we need all these experts that to make our industry work, to make our farms work. And we got this big group that's interested, that like what we do, that like the animals. Why wouldn't we foster that? Why would hopefully they're knocking on my door someday as a nutritionist or there's a veterinarian I'm calling, that's trying to help me out. So I think it truly is the future of our industry. You just got to think bigger than just the farm.
Mhm. Well, and I always say, like, even if we get some of them, even if some of them realize that's what I could do, I mean, that's worth it, right? It's in Gosh, I'll never forget. I know I say this all the time, but I'll never forget that feeling when I went to my first, layman swine conference, and I look out and I see all these kids that I had worked with through the National Junior Spine Association, and they were the nutritionist expert, the veterinarian expert. I mean, they were teaching me, and it was just such a cool moment because there are a lot of ways that we can find people a place in the pork industry. We need people in so many different areas, and I applaud you guys for focusing on young people and at least creating a place for them to engage at this age without strings attached with what that needs to look like someday.
Sure, and they're going to be advocates for us, for a long time, and they're going to get into places we can't get into. Another untapped resource that we're talking about and need to spend some more time figuring out is their families. You know, you think about these families that go to a pig show, and I've been to a few now that I'm not on the farm as much, and I feel like I can go, but grandma and grandpa's there, aunts and uncles are there, and I think, where are all these people on Monday morning? What water cooler are they standing around talking about pigs? Because they're telling what to do on the weekend. That's what we all do. So we got all these advocates that are getting into office buildings and going places that I can't get into, or not regularly for sure. Uh, we've got this big pool of advocates that all we need to do is tap into and share the information with them. They want to talk about it. They're excited about it. We just need to do our job and get them the right information.
Mhm. Yeah, so true. Okay, I'm gonna give you one last thing. If you had a minute to sit down with a pork producer right now, I mean, for some people, things are still pretty tough. For others, they're kind of feeling a little relief. But regardless of that situation for them, what would you say to them just to give them a little bit of hope about what's coming?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that could go our way. I think, long term, the trade situation looks good. Short term, it's a bit challenging. I realize that, but most of us are in this for the long haul. So, long term, we're in a great place. We're nearly the lowest cost producer in the world. I think we can take that position back from the Brazilians. We're the low cost producer in a world that demand for meat's growing. You got to be positive about that. That there's an opportunity, right? So we just got to figure out how to capitalize on that opportunity.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate the support of this episode's sponsor, AP. You can dive into more of the Pork Podcast on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and listen to it anywhere that podcasts are found. I'm Jennifer Scheich, finding the story behind the story.